Hello, my playoff-bound wildcard to St. Louis Blues. We're getting ready to take on the Winnipeg Jets. Let's talk about it.
Hey, this is Brayden Chen.
Subscribe to Locked On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to Locked On Blues, your home of the wildcard to playoff-bound St. Louis Blues, here part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Haley Taylor-Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues. And wow, I cannot wait for today's episode. I am going to talk to Harrison, who is the host of Locked On Jets, and we're going to discuss all things Blues, all things Jets, and break these two teams down to give you the best analysis of what is about to come in this series. I know personally I'm excited, and I know Harrison is excited. So if all things being said, let's get into today's episode.
Winnipeg Jets fans and St. Louis Blues fans, thank you so much for joining us on tonight's very special Locked On Blues Jets crossover episode. I am joined by Locked On Blues host Haley Taylor-Simon from so many networks, the 97.5 morning show from the Fanatic Network, as well as the Philly Sports Network. She is the Philadelphia Flyers credentialed reporter, and she hosts tons of shows, including the Blues. Haley, thank you so much for joining us on tonight's show. And obviously, this is going to be a huge series, Blues, Jets. I think a lot of Jets fans are probably feeling a little nervous. This is like seeing an old ex that I think folks have probably felt at least a little bit jilted by. Winnipeg in the past couple of years hasn't had a lot of playoff success, and the Blues have been certainly one of the teams that has ended that early run for the Jets. What's the mood like in St. Louis, and how are Blues fans feeling about this?
We're feeling pretty good. It's awesome. I mean, the Blues have missed out on the playoffs for the past two seasons. So going back into the playoffs with an extremely fantastic back half of the season is just super exciting. And it's the Jets, right? And it's basically this season replicates a lot of what our Stanley Cup winning season was in 2018-19. So I think just facing the Jets in the first round again just kind of reminisces on the past.
Oh, dear Lord, that is not fun for Jets fans. Let me tell you, if there is one thing that Winnipeg has recently had, it is a lot of playoff trauma. We don't really enjoy that part. But obviously, this Blues team is a little different. So, there's been some unique storylines. This team has kind of come through a lot. Coming into this playoff run, what are some of the biggest storylines really driving not only the Blues' success, but this recent resurgence? I mean, this team kind of came from almost nowhere to suddenly find itself in a reasonable playoff spot.
Yeah, so a big storyline, at least for me, will be Dylan Holloway. I know right now he is week to week and he hasn't been playing the past couple games, but he has been an absolute superstar for this Blues team. Obviously, the offer sheets from Edmonton, so that's a player that really just continued to thrive. Also, Jordan Kyrou, again, 3 straight seasons of 30-plus goals, so that's another player. But I think when it comes to the main storyline, you have to look at Robert Thomas and the impact and the leadership that he has had for this Blues team. I mean, over 80 points this season, 60 assists. He is our star. And in the beginning of the season, when he was hurt, the Blues did suffer. So I think coming off of the Four Nations with a confident Jordan Binnington, winning for Team Canada with Colton Parayko, there's just been a lot of positivity, and the coaching change, just there is a lot, Harrison, of storylines for the Blues.
Yeah, your season has been a little crazy, to say the least. And, from a Jets perspective and an outsider perspective, we have had a lot of conflicting rooting interests, because we're like, okay, which team is actually going to give Vegas a run for its money? Winnipeg right now is apparently getting the gauntlet of the Revenge Tour playoffs most likely route if the Jets were to advance. So starting it off with the Blues feels somewhat poetic, I guess. But obviously, watching the top line for St. Louis the past couple of weeks has been, both fun and a little scary if you're a Jets fan. But I guess from Winnipeg's perspective, this series really feels like it is the first stage of the so-called Revenge Tour. The Jets the past few years, we have a nice one and done sort of pattern of winning one playoff game and then losing 4 straight. So maybe this year they'll finally change that. I do feel like I'm more confident in this team. In previous years, a lot of what was said about the Jets was, oh, it's the fraud squad and, they're not that great. And unfortunately, I agreed with them. I saw the red flags and I'm like, yeah, this team's not really built for the playoffs. Last year, I don't think I was expecting it to be as bad as it was, but I was like, yeah, playoff Colorado is going to show up. It's probably not going to be that great for Winnipeg. People were like, well, they thrashed them like 7-0 right before the end of the year. And I'm like, it's the last game of the season. Like, the Avs are the Avs, right? Like, no one's taking it that seriously. Well, I guess the Jets did, and then they kind of found out a little bit of humble pie. But this year, I feel like the team is really committed. They're really bought in. And I'm interested to see how they respond. Obviously, they're dealing with right now a minor injury crisis. And so St. Louis has been, so hot recently. And then finally, the win streak comes to an end, against the Jets.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's going to be something that maybe kind of sticks in St. Louis's craw starting the series off, or do you think that they're ready to hit the ground running and they are just, at this point, just waiting for the playoffs to really kick off?
That's a good question, because I think a lot of people assume that what happens at the end of the regular season kind of transpires into playoff hockey. But the way that I look at playoff hockey, it's a whole new season in a sense. The intensity is there. And I feel like these players, they do a really good job of blocking out maybe some of the mishaps that have already happened. But I actually have to say, and I said this on yesterday's episode of Locked On Blues, I'm happy the Blues went into that little bit of a slump. They had a 3-game winless streak prior to their win against Utah. I'm happy that they got that out of the way after their winning streak, because for me, if the Blues won out, right, and let's go say they didn't lose and they had this incredible 16-game winning streak, I would be happy about that, but I'd be even more nervous, I think, heading into this, just because inevitably the team would have to lose at some point. But I don't like that the Blues have not found success against the Jets. And that's the reality of it. I know they have a little bit, but the Jets are just such a strong team. Obviously, Connor Hellebuck in net makes me nervous. Kyle Connor is always an issue. And I think that's what makes me nervous about this Jets team, is that there are certain players that I know are going to be issues. And it definitely showed that in the last game that these two teams met in.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why this year I felt more confident in this team. Their 5v5 game has finally become a strength. It used to be, oh, you got Connor Hellebuck and he's going to carry you through. And it's like, unless he's going to start scoring goals for the team, I don't know how much more he can possibly bail the squad out. So it's nice to see the Jets actually play a pretty consistent 60 minutes of hockey. The Blues game, I thought, was for the Jets a bit of a statement game. And it's not like, the Blues are the only team that have hit that recently. Winnipeg walked into Vegas and did the same thing. So I think the Jets are pretty serious about this year. I guess if I'm worried about anything, it's just going to be the health situation, because every time the Jets get an injury, they do make some adjustments. And I think, some of the lineup changes have been positive, but then they usually revert back to previous combinations. And I'm not sure that the previous combinations are as good. We often see Connor, Scheifele, and Velarde play together, and they've been much better this year. But I think for me, I'm like, well, I'm seeing Connor, Scheifele, and Iafallo really kill it. Do we want to split that lineup now? They're finally controlling, zone possession and creating some great offense. I'm just not really sure how Arneal's going to do this. And for him, this is like his first real playoff test. Montgomery has, loads more experience there, a lot more success. And here we kind of have not necessarily a first-time coach, because he has had this before, but certainly a first-time playoff coach. So this is going to be a very interesting battle. I'm looking forward to it. And I know you started identifying some Jets players. In just a brief moment, we're actually going to walk through, maybe one player from each main position, a forward, a defender, and a goalie that we really feel is going to be pivotal to this series. And I have a feeling I know who the Jets are, but I'm curious to see what you think about the Blues. But before we dive into all of that fun stuff, did want to let our friends and partners at FanDuel get in a brief second here. The NBA playoffs and, of course, the NHL playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes it easy to follow all of the biggest statistical trends, whether you're somebody who tracks goals, assists, three-pointers, steals, no matter what you're interested in, no matter what stat you feel you have an expertise in, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props, and you can do it live even when the game has already started. And while you're watching, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. But the only way that you can do that and not miss out is to go to FanDuel.com right now and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Hey friends, and welcome back to this extra special crossover episode of Locked On Jets and Blues. We are again joined by Haley Taylor-Simon. She has been on the Blues beat this year. It's been a crazy season for St. Louis, and obviously, we have some really big storylines coming into this series, but for a lot of Jets fans and for Blues fans, I think we're all kind of sizing up each other's teams, like who's going to be the standout star. Everyone knows who the Jets goalie is, but obviously we'll get to that in a moment. But maybe for the Blues, there are some perhaps underrated stars, right? Who do you think is going to be, for a forward, for a defender, and for the goalie, really the key players to watch?
This is a good question. So for a goalie, I'm going to start with the easy one. Obviously, Jordan Binnington. I'm sure a lot of people have preconceived notions of Jordan Binnington and what he is like on the ice. People say he's emotional, he's too reactive. I think he is a fantastic goalie. He has a bigger frame, which is able to make the net look really small. And Binnington played a great championship game in the Four Nations face-off. So for me, that is the guy that I feel comfortable with. And I just want to say too, and I'm sure Jets fans are very aware of Jordan Binnington because in 2019, his rookie season, I hate to say it, but that's when the magic began in the playoffs when the Blues beat the Jets. For defense, obviously, I'm going to have to go with Colton Parayko. I feel like I'm saying some of the obvious guys. So I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball. Besides Colton Parayko, Cam Fowler, the Blues picked him up from Anaheim this season, and he has had some of the best games of his career in St. Louis. He's missed out on the playoffs, I want to say, for the past 7 years or something. So he's been really excited to get back into playoff action. He's been a huge asset to this team. So again, that's another player just to be on the lookout for if you're a Jets fan. Now, when it comes to offense, my boy Robert Thomas, I have to tell you, I've been covering the Blues for about 2.5 years now, and my bio has stayed the same. It says Robert Thomas season because it's always Robert Thomas season. If there is a guy on the ice who is an excellent playmaker, it's Robert Thomas. However, I want to direct your attention to Zachary Bolduc. He's a rookie this season. 19 goals. He is one of the top leaders in rookie goals this season, and he has been on a heater since the Four Nations faceoff break. He actually went down to the Blues' AHL team, the Springfield Thunderbirds, to get some reps in because he felt like his game wasn't good enough. And ever since that, he's been excellent. So those are my players. But listen, I can name the whole entire team, honestly, and tell you reasons why certain players are going to be problematic. But when it comes to assistant playmaking, Robert Thomas. When it comes to scoring, Zachary Bolduc. And then, if healthy, Dylan Holloway.
Out of curiosity, one name that, I've seen pop up occasionally, but people have kind of been a little cooler on, it's Buchnevich. What's been going on with the season? Because I feel like Buch is one of my personal favorite sort of like top 6 guys that's come out of there. But, obviously Kyrou, Thomas, Bolduc, Holloway, those guys have really started to steal the show. Now they've got Snuggerud. And so, like, what's going on with Buch? Is he feeling ready for the postseason, or is maybe, Father Time starting to catch up a little bit to him?
Yeah, and I believe that's something people ask me a lot about Buchnevich. And I spoke to all these guys in October before the season really kicked off, and I know he feels good and he's confident. You know what it is? Sometimes when you're doing your job the way that you should be doing it, you're not going to stand out, right? And he had, a great goal against Utah, a nice little one-timer, and he does what he needs to do on the ice. Now, when he drops back to defense a little bit, not so good. But offensively, he gets the job done, which is why he is there. And I feel like he does play really good hockey, especially playing next to Tomer or if he's ever next to Shen. But I think that the problem is that you have some of the guys on the Blues who are just standing out so much. That's why you don't hear about Braden Shen that often. Not that he's not playing well, it's because he's doing his job and what he's expected to do. Same thing as Orion Suter on defense, right? 40 years old. He still wants to play, which is awesome, and he's doing a good job, but he's not standing out because he's just doing what he needs to get done. So while Bushi isn't maybe exceeding the expectations of many people, he is still a strong force, big body, and he is still a problem for opposing teams.
It's funny you mentioned Suter because I was just thinking the other day he scored a shorty, and I'm like, what year is it? Like it's crazy.
He is only one of 4 Blues players to score a shorthanded goal this season.
What a crazy little stat line. But it's also funny you mentioned Braden because I was thinking about him the other day. Here we have the battle of the Shen brothers, and this is, I guess, their first time ever meeting in the playoffs, which is fascinating. I just thought for some reason it would have happened somehow because, like, I know Luke's traveled the world at this point. He's actually, I would consider him a player to watch for the Jets just because, for Winnipeg, this has been an interesting year in transition. And Luke was brought in to be, this big physical guy, and he's certainly that. But I think most people know that, maybe the skating speed's a little bit of an issue. But I think, he tends to be aware of that. And so he's tried to really compensate for that. But I'm kind of looking forward to the Shen battle. I feel like this is going to be, a really, I don't know how much they're actually going to match up against each other. But, for folks who want those fun narratives, should be a good time. But curious to know who you think will actually win out on that one.
See, this is something I'm excited about because both Luke and Braden did play together in Philadelphia, and they played playoff hockey in Philadelphia together. And I've watched a lot of Luke and Braden throughout the years, right? And the one thing that I was looking forward to this season was the final matchup between the two guys. And then Luke gets traded, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll see them against Pittsburgh. Nope. And then he ends up going to Winnipeg. So this is going to be a very weird series. I know how their parents are, and I can tell you this, they're going to be very split on, what to do. But as much as I like Luke, and I do, and this is not biasy towards the Blues in any way, I just think that Braden is overall the better player out of the two. And it's not because Braden's a captain. Like, that sounds condescending, and it's not. Like, looking at these two guys for what it is, I just think that Braden is better, but Luke is more physical. So on a physical aspect, I would say Luke Shen, but just on a, hockey IQ, being able to draw plays and make things happen, it's going to be Braden.
Yeah, I think I'd agree there. I think for Luke, it's going to be important to keep the game simple and in front of him. I think a lot of times we've seen they've been playing Stanley and Shen together, which, I personally would have some concerns about just because the moment somebody gets behind him, it's a bit of a problem. But, in terms of like some of the other key players for the Jets, if we're still looking at the blue line, Morrissey will always be Morrissey. He's just, this is a guy who's like a Norris candidate on a routine basis. It's his second pairing guy, Sandberg, I think is the one that really has stepped up this year and has made the Jets' left side a strength. It used to be one of our biggest weaknesses, but he has been transformative. And with the Jets not having him this year, they went 500. So Sandberg is transformative for this back end, a really big piece. I'm really hoping that extension gets announced soon. I don't know if they'll do it until summer, but they keep signing, free agents here and there. So, hey, whatever they want to do, hand him a blank check. I don't care. He's clearly one of our most important anchors on defense, and really excited to see the playoff version of him. As far as the forwards go, this one is a tricky one. There's a lot of candidates. The guy that I'm going to focus on is obvious, but also not, I guess. It's Scheifele. And like Scheifele is a really curious player because I'll be honest, the last few years, I don't really think he was that engaged. Like when Maurice was here and before Bones, his body language just looked like he was just fed up. And in a lot of ways, as a Jets fan, I did understand it because I could get why the guys are frustrated. The team was going in circles, dead end playoff runs. And so, he just did not look like he gave a crap. And I think that was Maybe a little harsh, but I also got why he felt that way. But this year and really the past couple of seasons, we've seen him start to show the version of him that got him on Team North America in that World Cup of Hockey years ago. So I'm really expecting a big playoff series from him. And same goes in net. I mean, does anyone even really need me to say Connor Hellebuck? I'll say it anyways. It's, I guess, a jinx for some people. But Hellebuck has really had, a bad playoff rep. And when you actually look at the numbers, he's not been that bad, barring the last two seasons where honestly the Jets were just embarrassing in the postseason and really just as a team did not show up. He's even still got like a 9-11 despite those two awful runs. So I do think that we're going to see, a recovery. Maybe this is really the chance for him to, reauthor his own narrative. I think a lot of people say a lot of things about Hellebuck. Here he is finally being a Hart Trophy candidate favorite. I mean, we don't really ever see him talked about that way. He's probably deserved it for longer, but finally, some actual recognition. And we're going to get the Helly versus Binnington rematch of the Four Nations face-off. I mean, that sort of drama is going to be fun. It's not really going to bleed over, but I am hopeful for at least a little bit of a reconvening of what has been crazy year for hockey. Let me tell you. But of course, we've talked about a lot of the big names and stuff. There are still perhaps underrated players, X factors, and hidden storylines between these two. I want to ask you, Haley, about those in just a brief second. But before we dive into some of the more mysterious aspects of the series, did want to let our friends and partners at Amazon Fire TV tell you about their brand new 4K stick. They've got a great thing that they offer that's no console required. It's actually, you just plug it into your TV, it interfaces, and it basically plays like an Xbox. It's a gaming and entertainment hub, and all you need is your Fire TV stick and a controller that you can pair with it. And when you subscribe to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, that also comes with EA Play included, you are ready to play on your 4K TV. You can dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports College Football, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, Avowed, as easily as you stream your favorite TV shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. And with Wi-Fi 6 and auto low latency mode advanced tech, Fire TV 4K delivers smoother, more responsive gameplay with lightning fast speeds you need to stay competitive. As somebody who plays FIFA or FC as they call it nowadays, I'm personally, somebody who loves the beautiful game, and you have to have that responsiveness and lightning quick reflexes because, let's be real, some of the kids out there who play this game are way better at it than I am, and you need a responsive service, and that's why the Fire TV Stick 4K is fantastic. So if you are ready to get started and offer one of the best and most affordable options for streaming games, head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. X-Pass Game Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Hey friends, and welcome back to these closing thoughts on today's very special Locked On Jets crossover episode. We are rejoined for one final time by Haley Taylor Simon of Locked On Blues. Haley, it is going to be a fun playoff series. We are all looking forward to Jets Blues, and of course, from Winnipeg's perspective, this is going to be a very interesting series, a chance to perhaps rewrite some of our old haunts and things. But as far as the Blues are concerned, what are some of the maybe interesting stats, perhaps X factors, or players that people are perhaps overlooking?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's so much that I could say. Jordan Binnington right now has an 11-game home streak right now, which is awesome for wins. So I feel like people might be overlooking Jordan Binnington. And I feel like the number one thing that the Blues struggled with at the beginning of the season was the fact that the defense wasn't playing that well. So despite Binnington maybe not having the best record this season overall, sometimes, and as you know, what's in front of your goalie really does impact how they're viewed. And a guy can be great and solid in net, but just not have the best help in front of him. So that was one. Another thing is basically the rookies this season. I know Snuggie got his first goal of his NHL career against Utah, which was awesome. But he has been so great for the Blues, especially on the power play. The Blues, they're not the best power play team. They're not the best PK team. They actually struggle a lot on the penalty kill, like not good. So like Winnipeg going on the power play would not be ideal. For you guys, obviously, it's like, oh, let's go on the power play. So that is something that is a weakness for the Blues, despite the fact that the Blues did score 3 power play goals in the last game. The Blues went through a coaching change. Obviously, they fired Drew Bannister and they hired former Bruins head coach Jim Montgomery, and the team has been rocking and rolling since then. So I feel like just under the new leadership, the Blues have really exceeded. And then there's other contributing factors like Nathan Walker, the only Australian player in the NHL. He's such a physical guy, right? He actually is one of the leaders on the team for the most penalty minutes. So again, not so ideal, but he is a physical aspect. In the fourth line that the Blues have, we call it the WTF line. It's Alexei Torchenko, it's Fox the centering, and then on the right, it's usually Walker. They are so good for players that are really not good players, so to say. They really work well together. Joel Hofer, who is the backup goalie, he's played great this year, obviously. Him and Binnington, they have a little bit of a tandem, not so much. I expect Binnington to play all the games, obviously, but in worst case scenario, I would feel confident with him. There was even conversation about him becoming the 1A. But overall, this Blues team, they've done something incredible with this 12-game win streak. I mean, they were 7th from the bottom, okay? They were a bottom 7 team in January. People did not expect them to go to the playoffs. I didn't. The last time that the St. Louis Blues missed 3 consecutive playoffs was 2005 to 2008. So it has been a while since the team has done this. 46th playoff appearance for this organization, which is actually remarkable considering all things aside. So I feel good. The Blues also have a lot of first-round exits too, Harrison. In our history, we don't like to talk about it. Lots of playoff experience, a lot of first-round exits. But right now, we have 5 guys on this team who did win the Cup with the Blues in 2019, and a total of 7 players on this team that have hoisted the Stanley Cup. So we have a lot of experience on this team of guys that know what it's like to battle, especially Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway, who both made to the finals last season with Edmonton. Fell to the Panthers. Can't say I was too upset about that one. And I actually want to ask you, Harrison, and this is something that I feel like a lot of people that are maybe not fans of a Canadian team want to know. How would Canadian teams such as the Winnipeg Jets feel like if a team like the Oilers won the Cup? Would you be happy about it, or would you have been like, oh, we wanted to do it?
This is a tough one because there is Canadian support for other Canadian franchises. I think it's kind of like, well, my choice is a bullet or cyanide, so I guess I'll take the one that's slightly more palatable. I think we still when the Oilers lose, it's funny more than anything. I think it's kind of like, yeah, wow, you've won like 6 straight lottery drafts and you still can't pull out a cup winner. You have like the greatest player in history and you still can't get it done. But I mean, if they won last year, I think Jets fans would have been somewhat supportive. I wouldn't say that they'd be like overly thrilled, but I think because Maurice was also in it, they probably would have felt like, former Jets coach who had some decent memories. They'd have preferred that. But ordinarily, I mean, there's only a couple of Canadian franchises that I think we'd rather die before we root for. I'd put the Flames up there. Probably Toronto is another one. But otherwise, I mean, if the Sens wanted or something, I think people would be like, yeah, that's pretty cool. You're cool with that. But obviously, please let it be the Jets. But it's really funny you were talking about Nate Walker a little bit because I just harkened back to, and I can't repeat what was said about him, but I come back to this quote from Evgeny Kuznetsov several years ago. I think it was one of Walker's first games as a Cap. He was like, that little bleepity bleep, he play amazing. And I just feel like that has not really apparently gone away. It sounds like he continues to just be that little spark for the Blues too.
Yeah, I mean, every season I get to have a one-on-one with Nathan Walker, and there's just so much passion for him. And when he is on the ice, because in the beginning of the season and throughout the season, he has been healthy scratch, but obviously we had a lot of line combos at the beginning of the season, so they were testing out some things. But whenever he is in the lineup, and I will always say this about Nathan Walker, he plays his butt off. Okay, that's the appropriate way to say it. You're never going to see any player put as much effort in as Nathan Walker does. And, it's funny. Like I know I'm switching players for a second, but Cam Fowler, he gets traded to the Blues, right, from Anaheim. He has, I believe it was like 7 games until he hit his 1,000th game, which he was able to play at the Winter Classic, which the Blues won, by the way, 6-2 over the Blackhawks. And he was able to score 2 goals in that game. And I think about it and I'm like, wow, it's some of the players that you don't expect to see big things happen, make things happen. And I feel like that is why I have this confidence, because the Blues, let's be honest, they maybe don't have the biggest names in the NHL, right? I have to tell people all the time, Robert Thomas is excellent. And people are like, oh, who is that? I'm like, are you living under a rock? But people really don't know many Blues players because they're not these big headline names. And the national media likes to do a good job of showcasing teams like Toronto, New York, Boston, a lot of the original 6. And that bothers me greatly because the teams that are in the playoffs, not those teams, except for the Maple Leafs. So I'm happy for the national media to kind of put a little bit of a spotlight on some of these other teams that do have really good players. And that goes for both teams as well. I mean, I don't know how the media is in Canada, but I just know that here in the States, they just like to talk about like the same rotating 3 teams, which bothers me greatly when the talent on these playoff teams obviously is better than the teams that were eliminated.
Yeah, that also happens up north. The Jets, I think, have had a reputation of really being overlooked, even when the team's been in first this year. I mean, they talk about it being Hellebuck's team, and so it's just kind of like, I'm like, okay, yes, Hellebuck is amazing. He's having like one of the best seasons ever. But if we're looking at underrated players and stuff, I'm looking at Morgan Barron, who's been moved to center and has been awesome on the 4th line. You've got Adam Lowry, who's kind of one of the straws that stirs the drink. He doesn't get as much attention because he's kind of like, people view him as like a shutdown center, and I feel like sometimes that's a little unfair. He does so much work on the forecheck and creates tons of chaos in front of goal. He just doesn't always capitalize on that, but we still love him anyways. Amazing captain. But, I think if we're looking at maybe some perhaps underrated things for the Jets, one thing you mentioned earlier, the Jets power play, it is still pretty good. I will say that with Velarde and Ehlers both perhaps missing time in the series, it's not that threatening. Scheifele, Perfetti, Connor, those guys are still great triggermen, Morrissey on the back end, but they are missing 2 of their most important players on the power play. And so that has had a really noticeable impact. And I think if the Blues are relatively disciplined on the PK, which I know it's been a little bit of a challenge this year, but with how the Jets have been moving the puck, I mean, it's been rough, but the Jets power play recently hasn't been as sharp, and God forbid we get a 5-on-3. Once we get a 5-on-3, it's like the Jets don't know what to do. So it's like the great nemesis. Winnipeg suddenly gets a 2-man advantage, and it's like they've never done that before. I think for this one, the Jets are going to probably need to win at 5v5. You're not going to get a lot of power play calls to begin with, or penalty calls. And so the Jets are going to just have to kind of do their strong defensive game, keep rolling lines. And I think that's probably their key ingredient, because the Blues are going to have those moments where, they might be hemmed in, but if they get a good counter, that's not a team that you want to have. Kyrou, Thomas, Bolduc, even Fox, I've had time for. I had a soft spot for him back from his Dallas days, but whether that's going to come into play, we'll have to see. But I am thinking, curious to know what your series prediction is. What are you thinking this one ends in?
5 or 6 for the Blues. I know everybody watching right now in Winnipeg is going to say, oh, there's no way the Blues are going to win. I'm still going to go with 2 things. One, the President's Trophy curse. I'm just hoping that happens. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but it's one of the best, like, non-superstitions in hockey. And I don't want the Jets to be the one that breaks it. And I also think that the Blues, I've never seen a team so motivated. And I feel like the Blues have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And that's how it is when you're playing as an underdog. I mean, this team was not supposed to be in the playoffs. They stood pat at the trade deadline. Their GM said, I believe that this team can go to the playoffs. And it took them up until game 82 to secure their playoff spot. For Winnipeg, they have great talent, and I am not denying that by any means. Obviously, Winnipeg scares me. Vegas scares me more because I just feel like Vegas is a bunch of cheaters, but that's a whole other discussion. But Winnipeg, they're good. And if worst case scenario, the Blues lose to Winnipeg, I hope it's a good series. I hope it's not a sweep. That is so boring in hockey. Ideally, it'd be a game 7 overtime, but unfortunately, that won't be happening. But yeah, I really feel good about the Blues. I think I'm still on my little bit of a high horse right now, for being honest, but I'm gonna have to ride with them. How about you?
I think I hear you on that one, and also I think we're all united in our hatred of Vegas. Really tired of that franchise. Would like them to be out in the first round.
It's every single season, not this season, but Vegas. I could go on. I'm just gonna stop.
Yeah, we've been down that road many times ourselves. I've got a similar time frame. I will say I do think it's for the Jets. I think it's not going to be the way it was in the 4-0 loss. I do think that this series is going to be tight. I think that Binnington will probably have to stand on his head a little bit, but I think that the Blues' top 6 is the thing that's going to keep them fighting just that extra one more game. And I think this will probably be a 5 or 6 game series. I lean more towards 6. I think the Blues are going to scrap out at least 1 or 2 wins in between. It's going to be really hard, and I think that they have an obvious uphill battle starting off on the road in Winnipeg. That is not a fun place to play. It is if you like the noise, but if you actually want to win games, yeah, I know, right? It's gonna be a madhouse, and I think Jets fans are actually excited for once. Past couple of playoff runs, it's been a little quiet, but I think this is going to be different story.
Dude, and I'm just